Hello, I'm Christian Oberlin, the Ruth and Hartley Barker Director and CEO of the Wisconsin Historical Society. It's an honor and a privilege to virtually welcome all of you to the Historical Society Reading Room naming and portrait unveiling honoring retired Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson. Thank you, Governor Evers, for your executive order making this all possible. We are grateful for your leadership. It is important in these times to have these honors and regard those who have come before us to make this state an amazing place to live and raise our families. For the past 110 years, the Reading Room has been the public face of the Wisconsin Historical Society Library, a world-renowned repository of collections focusing on Wisconsin and North American history. Those that have commissioned the room, including Lucius Fairchild, Wisconsin's 10th governor and UW Law School graduate, felt its structure and design were a purpose to inspire learning, and its beauty and majesty to illustrate the public spirit of Wisconsin, as well as an object lesson in architecture and for later generations. Even today, hundreds of students and residents and scholars do their research and study in the Wisconsin Historical Society Reading Room. Knowing that Chief Justice Abrahamson spent countless hours studying law in this reading room while attending the UW, and the significant contribution she has made throughout her career to the judicial system and our history of women in Wisconsin, it seems fitting to name the library reading room at the Wisconsin Historical Society after her and in honor of her. It is now my great pleasure to introduce retired Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Janine Geske.
Good morning. As Christian mentioned, I am Janine Geske, a retired Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice and a retired Marquette Law School professor. I am also a member of the Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson Legacy Committee, along with Senator Tammy Baldwin, Amy Bogus, Christine Brenner Mungley, and Benjamin Wagner. We, along with the governor and Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, are delighted to be with you all today to celebrate the naming of the Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson Reading Room at the Wisconsin Historical Society Library. It is a stunning room, and I cannot think of anyone more deserving for this honor than Shirley. Thank you to the governor for designating the executive order. In addition to the commission of a portrait, which we will have a chance to see for the first time later in the program, the committee has established a law school, Marquette University Law School and University of Wisconsin Law School annual student award in the Chief Justice's name. Both Deans Joseph Kearney and Daniel Tachakti expressed their gratitude for the naming of those awards and offer their congratulations to Shirley and to her family for this wonderful designation. A quick housekeeping matter. Note that we have activated the chat room to the right of the image. If during this broadcast you want to leave a short story or a special experience that you've had with the chief, we'd love to hear from you, and please include it in the chat room. I have known Shirley Abrahamson for well over 40 years. She has been a mentor, a colleague, and a friend. So I am so very delighted to be part of this very special day. We not only recognize her scholarship and her contributions to the bar and to the courts, but her leadership and her gifts to making the Wisconsin courts more understandable, more accessible, and most of all, most responsive to the needs of our citizens. No matter where I travel around the state, people always will say to me, be sure to say hi to Shirley. She has touched people all over the state, whether it is police officers, whether it's teachers, whether it's custodians, whether it's people working in shelters. They all know Shirley and they all wish her well. They want to then tell us a story about how she impacted the courts, their lives and the law. I, like many of you, are very proud to call myself one of her friends. We are so fortunate that she and Seymour decided to make Wisconsin their home. Speaking of family, I am pleased to now introduce to you Dan Abrahamson, who's going to join us from San Francisco. Dan is going to say a few words before we hear from friends and family about his mother's outstanding career and contributions to Wisconsin that we are here to celebrate today.
I am pleased to appear on behalf of former Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson and the entire Abrahamson family to extend our heartfelt appreciation for honoring my mother in this splendid fashion. As a serious student of Wisconsin legal history, as a professor of law at the University of Wisconsin, as a practicing attorney representing clients across Wisconsin, as a 4-time candidate for state office, and as the longest serving appellate justice in Wisconsin state history, my mother was repeatedly drawn to the remarkable resources, both documentary and human, at the State Historical Society. It was not uncommon to find Shirley hard at work in the Historical Society's main reading room, surrounded by stacks of books, publications, and photocopied materials, conducting research, crafting arguments, reworking opinions, drafting articles for publication, and composing speeches to deliver around the state, around the country, and around the world. My mother is humbled to have the main reading room named in her honor. She is also delighted. Thank you, Governor Evers. Today's naming would not have happened without your inspiration. But it also would not have happened without the hard work of every member of the host committee, and today would not have transpired without the daily efforts of Historical Society staff. I have worked closely with staff to arrange for the transfer of my mother's papers and artifacts to the Historical Society for cataloging, preserving, and eventual public access. The staff are the guardians of our state's historical riches, and we cannot thank them enough. Governor Evers, Senator Baldwin, Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, Justice Geske, members of the host committee, and to everyone watching online, a heartfelt thank you from the Abrahamson family.
Hi, I'm Justice Ann Walsh Bradley and am delighted to be part of this event today. How fitting it is that the reading room of the State Historical Society be named in honor of my friend and former colleague, Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson, a person who loves reading. As Shirley tells it, her younger sister was an outdoor enthusiast. She played everything and did everything. She played basketball and went hiking and biking. But Shirley, in contrast, said that her activity was indoors and it was reading. And reading she did until her family moved to New Jersey when she was in 3rd grade. A few years ago, I did an oral history with Shirley, and I asked her what she remembered about New Jersey. And she responded by telling me this story. She said, I remember I wanted a library card. That didn't seem all that difficult to me because I had a library card when I was in New York City. And so my mother and I went to the public library, but I couldn't get a card because my parents didn't own property. You see, the library wouldn't give cards to children unless their parents owned property. And for Shirley and her family, that meant her dad would have to take off work, locate the landlord, and persuade the landlord, who had no secretary, to write a letter on the family's behalf, saying that, yes, indeed, they did pay their rent on time and that they were responsible people. So the landlord wrote the letter, and Shirley got her library card, and so her love of reading continued. She said, I can remember every Saturday I went to the library and brought home as many books as they allowed me to take out. And the following Saturday I brought them all back, having read them all, and would start that again. I did that all the way through grade school, she said, and into high school when we finally returned to New York City. Shirley recounted that as a young child, she resented the library card episode. She said to me in the oral history, "I felt that my family was put into this second-class position. My father, after all, was running a successful business, a grocery business. He paid his bills, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't get a library card. It just didn't make sense to me," she said. "It didn't seem fair." And that focus on fairness and a sense of equal treatment for all, no matter your status in life, can be seen throughout Shirley's career. Fast forward with me, if you will, to June of 2019. The setting is the state capitol in Madison, and the event is the celebration of her many years of service upon her retirement. And among the dignitaries speaking at that event that day was United States Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And Justice Ginsburg said this of Shirley Abrahamson: "Among jurists I have encountered in the United States and abroad, Shirley Abrahamson is the very best, the most courageous and sage, the least self-regarding. In her 40 years and more on the Wisconsin Supreme Court as Justice, then Chief Justice, she has been ever mindful of the people, all of the people the law exists or should exist to serve." Justice Ginsburg continued, "She never forgets about the everyday person." And it is, I think, that tribute by Justice Ginsburg that really exemplifies the life and career of Shirley Abrahamson. Shirley has been and continues to be a champion for fairness and equal justice for all, regardless of their station in life. I remember one time when Shirley and I were standing next to the bench in the hearing room of the state capitol, the Supreme Court hearing room, and she pointed to the bench, which is where we sit when we hear the cases during oral argument. And she said to me, "Anne, when I'm sitting there, I'm standing up for the people of Wisconsin." And I think today's event is a recognition of Shirley Abrahamson's many years of service, standing up for the people of Wisconsin. Thank you, Shirley, and be well, my dear friend.
Hi, I'm Senator Tammy Baldwin. Thank you to the Wisconsin Historical Society for sponsoring this very special event. I'm so incredibly honored to join leaders from across Wisconsin in recognizing a public servant who means so much to our state. Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson is a pioneer as the first woman appointed to the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the first female Chief Justice on our state's highest court. She not only broke barriers, I think she also may have broken a couple egos of her male colleagues along the way. For the chief, serving on the Supreme Court meant serving the people of Wisconsin as an independent, fair, and impartial justice. Because after all, the court and our court system belongs to the people, not powerful special interests. And that's why she spent a lot of her time traveling around the state, meeting with people, whether it was meeting with local judges, riding along with local law enforcement, or meeting with advocates for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. The chief always understood that you can't serve the people if you don't walk in their shoes. And that's why the people of Wisconsin elected her to the Supreme Court 4 times, and she served 43 years on the court, serving the people. It's only fitting that Governor Evers would designate the Historical Society Library Reading Room in honor of Chief Justice Abrahamson. All of us know the stories of that lonely office light on at the state capitol as the chief did her job working late into the night, reading briefs and writing opinions. The State Historical Society may need to extend their own hours later into the night to truly do the chief justice. With this designation, we honor the Wisconsin work ethic that the chief lived up to with all of her hard work. We honor a legacy that has inspired and will continue to inspire so many others. And together, we honor a true public servant who we will always be proud to call one of our own. Thank you, and thanks, Chief Justice Abrahamson, for all you've done for the great state of Wisconsin.
My name is Corey Ashley, and I'm a judge in Milwaukee County Circuit Court. I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to say a few words about Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson. The Chief Justice has had an immeasurable impact on our courts and the advancement of female lawyers in Wisconsin and this country. I could spend my time talking about her numerous decisions and how she has had an impact on every practice area of the law, as I'm sure many will. But I'd like to spend my time telling you about the first time that I met the Chief Justice. When I was a sophomore in high school, I participated in Badger Girls State, a civics organization in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, where the girls create a fictional state of Wisconsin. We actually hold elections for various positions, and I ran for and was elected Supreme Court Justice. I could not have been more surprised at my swearing-in ceremony to be met by, congratulated by the actual Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The Chief Justice was so kind. She talked to me about why I was interested in the law and encouraged me to pursue it. That memory stays with me, just as the picture that we took to memorialize it does. I've come to live by the Chief Justice's words, that when you're in a situation where you're the only one, that they have to see you. That sentiment resonates so deeply with me, because as a Black woman, I oftentimes find myself as the only one in many of the professional spaces that I occupy. But just as the Chief Justice persevered, I am determined to use those opportunities to bring my perspective. I want to thank the Wisconsin Historical Society for giving me this opportunity and for honoring the Chief Justice. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Justice. Dave Mahoney, Dane County Sheriff, here in Madison, Wisconsin. I was asked to share a few minutes with you on the impact you've had in my career and to talk about a story. One of the things I always took away from our discussions was that every individual in the criminal justice system is a mother, a father, a brother, or sister to somebody in our community. That we must have the compassion. We must have the ability to treat with dignity and humanity all individuals. First arrested, charged with a crime, offered bail, and convicted or acquitted. Throughout the criminal justice system, we have a responsibility to those individuals and all who make up our community. Justice, you've had quite an impact throughout my career. You have an impact even after retirement, because I think often of the opportunities that you've given others in our community by being a justice. The lessons learned you've provided to law enforcement leaders like myself, and to the example you've set of what our judiciary should do in the view of the rule of law. So for that, Justice, I want you to know how much I appreciate the work that you have done over your career. and know that you've made an impact at every level of the criminal justice system, and you've certainly made an impact in my career. So as you're surrounded by family and loved ones, by grandkids, know that in Wisconsin you're still loved by so many and respected by all. You will always be someone I look up to, someone I think of often, and someone I consider a friend.
Shirley Abrahamson was a dear, dear friend of my parents and of me and of my siblings and my children. My father hired her for her first legal job out of law school, and they were very close as my father became a judge, a federal judge, and Shirley Abrahamson became a great justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I was honored to be sworn in 5 different times by Shirley Abrahamson, 3 as Attorney General and 2 as Governor of Wisconsin, argued cases before, but in many ways I have known her best as a wonderful dear friend of our family. As busy as this woman was in her life, always working, I mean, she's legendary, she would still find time for just acts of really great kindness. My mother, who was a dear friend of Shirley's, was suffering from some pretty difficult health problems, and Shirley called to say she was coming over. She had with some chicken soup, and we thought this was great, a Jewish mother coming to bring my mother chicken soup. And a little while later, the doorbell rang, and I went to the door to open it, and there was Shirley Abrahamson standing with a can of Campbell's chicken soup. And that kind of exemplified her humor, the generosity of her spirit to be visiting with her mother, and also everybody who knows Shirley knows she wasn't going to take any time to make real chicken soup, so this is what she did. But just so many stories like that about Shirley, her humor, her kindness, her thoughtfulness to her friends. We will all be, this state has just been so incredibly fortunate that she and Seymour decided that this was going to be their home, and the state has been enormously benefited by it.
My name is Hildy Adler, and I've known Shirley since 1963 when I came to Madison to marry Julius, who was a colleague of Seymour's. A couple of years after that, when Daniel was about 1.5 and our son David was about 6 months old, Shirley and I decided it would be fun and meaningful to celebrate the Jewish holidays together, or some of them. So we celebrated Passover together that year, together with Bernie Weisblum. And in December, we celebrated Hanukkah. So those are the holidays that we celebrated over time. Other families joined in, and we got to be a larger group. And everybody who came never left. The Temens came, and the Kushners came, and the Builders came, and Bernie always came, and a lot of people. In the end, we were about up to 35 people and 3 generations. We continued this tradition for 55 years without ever missing a year. The Abrahamsons always brought the wine because everybody brought something and they didn't want to cook, so the wine was the most appropriate stuff for them. These celebrations meant an enormous amount to everybody, and they did to Shirley and Seymour, and they did to us. The last time Shirley was there was in 2019, a couple of months before she left for California. People were so happy to see her, and she was so happy to see everybody else. Those are the memories that none of us or our children or our grandchildren will ever forget, because they were very, very special occasions.
Hi. We're Dave and Louise Trubeck. We met Shirley in 1973 when we moved to Madison. I met Shirley then, and she was very forthcoming to me. We came from similar backgrounds in that we were both from New York City, and we were both lawyers in a period when that was quite pioneering. In fact, Shirley was behind an article written in the Capital Times with a big picture of our family, and it was headed, "New Woman Lawyer Comes to Madison," as if that was a distinguishing characteristic. I was brought to Madison in order to set up a public interest law firm that also had a clinic. The law school dean, George Bunn then, wanted to do this quite innovative project. And Shirley was extremely helpful. She worked with me, including developing a redlining project in Racine, which was quite radical then.
So I knew Shirley in a number of ways. Of course, we were colleagues and the law faculty, but also we were friends, and we used to visit Shirley and Seymour and Dan out on the lake in their beautiful place next to the lake, and I remember those visits very, very well. Of course, perhaps the most unusual and interesting thing that I did with Shirley was to go to Russia right after the fall of the Soviet Union to do a report for the U.S. government on prospects for the rule of law in Russia. No one, of course, was more committed to the rule of law than Shirley, and no one better equipped to assess the situation there, aided by excellent translators and Russia experts who we brought along. And we traveled around the country, we interviewed judges, we interviewed lawyers. Shirley and I and the rest of the team ended up being somewhat skeptical about prospects for the rule of law in Russia, that being something that was quite a challenge and for which there was very little history. And of course, sad to say, our rather pessimistic report has been proven to be correct. But it was a wonderful experience and a great time to get to know Shirley in a different context.
Hello, my name is Moses Abrahamson. I'm so happy to be here and pleased to speak about my grandmother, Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson, or Nana, as I call her. When I was young, I spent my summers in Madison with her. Every day, she would encourage me with 3 simple words: more fun ahead. At the time, I thought more fun ahead just meant an eventual trip to Michael's Frozen Custard, which was great because, I mean, who doesn't like ice cream? But as I got older, I realized the meaning of more fun ahead meant more than that. More fun ahead meant there were always new experiences and adventures around the corner. More fun ahead meant, even if we didn't quite know, sense of adventure, curiosity, and thirst for knowledge is directly related to those 3 simple words. I'm so grateful for her words that have taught me, whatever life brings, there's, well, more fun ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Nichols, and I'm honored to share a thought about Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson, the greatest jurist ever to serve on a Wisconsin court. I'm especially pleased that we're honoring Justice Abrahamson with the opening of a reading room, because, of course, she has always loved to read. She's read the law, she's read fiction and nonfiction, and she's integrated it all into her brilliant legal writing. I'd like, if I could, to take a moment to tell the story of Justice Abrahamson and a particular book, one that I wrote. About a decade ago, I had a new book coming out about Wisconsin politics. We were going to do the debut event on the University of Wisconsin campus. We found out that C-SPAN was coming, which made it an even bigger deal. When the event began, we had a good crowd, and it filled the room. At a certain point, the fire marshal said that they had to close the doors and not let anyone else in. People kept showing up, and were standing in the hallway outside. Among the slightly late arrivals was Justice Abrahamson. She didn't say, "Don't you know who I am?" or "Can't you make an accommodation for me? I'm the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court." Rather, she stood in the hallway with everyone else, listening from afar, joking with people, talking with folks, listening to their stories. And finally, after a while, she headed back to her work at the state capitol. When I learned that she'd been stuck in the hallway, I called her and said, "I'm really sorry." And she said, "There's nothing to apologize for. I was right where I belonged. I was with the people." And of course, that's the secret of Justice Shirley Abrahamson. She never saw herself as some regal figure, as some jurist ruling from on high. She always recognized the Wisconsin progressive tradition, an egalitarian tradition that says that judges and governors and senators serve us. And the truth is, no one has served us more ably than Justice Shirley Abrahamson.
Hello, Governor Tony Evers here. I am so thrilled to be joining you all today by video for the dedication of the Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson Reading Room. As a lawyer, a professor of law, and member of our Supreme Court, Justice Abrahamson has served our state and our country with honor and distinction. Over her 43 years on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Chief Justice Abrahamson was a champion for our judicial and legal institutions and served with an unwavering commitment to independence and fair application of the law. She has inspired many, being the first woman to serve on the bench and as Chief Justice, and has served as a role model for countless women and young people to pursue careers in law and public service. I can think of no better way to honor the historic contributions she made to our state than with this continued reminder of her legacy for generations to come. The Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson Reading Room will serve as a source of continued inspiration for young people and a symbol of our deep appreciation for her years of public service to our state. I could not be more thrilled to honor such an incredible public servant, judicial mind, and Wisconsin icon with all of you today. And symbol of our deep appreciation for her years.
Thanks, Crystal. I'm so pleased to share with you the first view of this stunning portrait of Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson and to celebrate the dedication of the Wisconsin Historical Society's reading room in her name.
Julie Heffernan. My mother chose Julie Heffernan to render her portrait because as an artist, Ms. Heffernan is known for creatively situating the subjects of her paintings in environments layered with historical and social meaning. Ms. Heffernan is also a delightful collaborator. There are many elements that come together in my mother's portrait, each of which tell a portion of my mother's story. Ms. Heffernan has created an artwork that not only shows my mother's many achievements as a justice, but also as a woman, a spouse, mother, grandmother, and a community leader and role model. I want to briefly describe just a few of the images that appear in the painting. Ms. Heffernan seated Shirley behind a stack of legal texts that would shape as well as bookend her legal career. Those volumes include the reporters that contain my mother's first and final published opinions as a justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. There is the public library card that my mother applied for as a young girl, but was initially refused. She was denied a library card because her parents, my grandparents, Leo and Seal, first generation Jewish immigrants from Poland, did not own property. Nevertheless, my mother persisted, and she secured her library card. This incident fueled my mother's desire from a young age to do justice and seek equal opportunity for others. Also on the desk is a bowl holding Tootsie, my mother's pet goldfish. Many folks throughout Wisconsin are familiar with Tootsie the goldfish. My mother used Tootsie to introduce audiences around the state to the work of judging. She invited her audiences to decide Tootsie's fate by debating the plain language of a common residential lease to decide whether or not Tootsie should be evicted from her apartment under the no pets allowed provision of the contract. Then there is the cup holding the many sharpened pencils my mother always had at hand for editing her own writing and that of others. Her law clerks, as well as her son, and more recently her grandson, grew painfully accustomed to having their hard work pared to the bone in her quest for accuracy, simplicity, and clarity. Some will wonder why there's a muskellunge on her desk. It is a plaque commemorating the very first time Shirley went fishing. My mother decided to try fishing in northern Wisconsin while campaigning for re-election. She landed the champion muskie in that year's World Muskie Hunt, because that's how Shirley rolls. Behind Shirley is a collage of images comprising some of the most important events from her life. Those photos include Shirley being sworn in over the course of her 43-year career, the attorney Gordon Sinekin of the law firm LaFollette and Sinekin, who hired my mother as the firm's first female attorney, photos of my father, Seymour, her husband of more than 60 years, and a picture of my mother reading to her grandson, Moses, a favorite activity with one of her favorite humans. In the foreground of Shirley's portrait, you will spot a teeming profusion of roses and peonies, some of her favorite flowers, all at the height of bloom. These symbolize her lifelong appreciation for beauty and nature. She spent many hours in her garden at home. They remind us that life is short, and they teach us the importance of tending to core values and not letting those values wither from neglect. In closing, let me remark upon that which people may have observed first, that Julie Heffernan chose to depict my mother at the beginning, not well into or at the close of her career. In the painting, Ms. Heffernan surrounds my mother with mementos from her past and seats her in the middle of the future that will be hers to make. I believe Julie decided to paint young Shirley in order that the portrait could speak more immediately and deeply to young women everywhere embarking on their respective careers, so that Shirley could inspire them to move forward with courage and conviction, even from a young age, and to chart their own paths, even when those paths have yet to be forged. These are just a few of the symbols and meanings contained in the portrait of my mother. Thank you, Julie, for your artistry. I encourage everyone to spend some more time with this rendering of her. When you do, summon the many sides of yourself and trust in what is possible when you put in the hours, treat others with dignity, model integrity, and move through the world with compassion.
Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Governor Evers, for this very important dedication to Shirley. Thank you, members of the committee, for your hard work and all those who helped put today together. And I want to thank all of you who left comments and stories on the chat. Feel free to continue to do that. And most importantly, congratulations, Chief. We love you. You can tell that by the comments. You can tell that by the chat. And we are very, very happy for you to have this dedication to recognize your great service to the state of Wisconsin. If you want to learn more about the Legacy Project, please visit our website at wisconsinhistory.org/Abrahamson dedication. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a great day.